With the holiday season in full swing, it is a perfect time to look at a Christmas film. And it is a kids' film where Martians kidnap Santa that had no budget, a laughably bad script, cheesy costumes, poor sets, a horrifyingly awful-looking polar bear costume, and an even worse-looking killer robot, as bad as it sounds. Guess we're gonna find out. I'm Bob, you're you, and this is classically bad cinema. Christmas holiday brings classic Christmas movies like Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Die Hard. Unfortunately, not all of these are classics. Sometimes you get train wrecks like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. If a classic film can be described as this...
The silent majesty of a winter's morn, the clean, cool chill of the holiday air.
Then this film can be described as this.
An asshole in his bathrobe, emptying a chemical toilet into my sewer.
Shitter was full!
This low-budget 1964 American science fiction comedy film tried to cash in on the space race that was in full swing and interest in space travel that reached a fever pitch at this time. Every kid in America wanted to grow up to be an astronaut, and seeing how kids also love Santa Claus, it was inevitable that someone would bring these two together. So on November 14, 1964 saw the release of Santa Claus Conquers the Martian. Unsurprisingly, the film was critically panned during its release and has regularly appeared on lists of the worst films ever made. If this movie was a gift, it would be socks. We start out with Martian kids Kemar and Bomar watching Earth programs on stolen cable. At least that's what I think's going on here, because their dad's too cheap to pay for it legally. Anyways, they're watching a special report from Andy Henderson from Santa's workshop in the North Pole. Andy was played by actor Ned Werdimer, who would go on to play the doorman Ralph Hart on the television show The Jeffersons. Santa seems high as shit here from whatever he's smoking in that pipe of his.
Prancer and Dancer and Thunder and Blitz and Vixen and Nixon. Nixon, all right.
We also get introduced to an overactive Mrs. Claus who seems to almost lose her mind for some reason when she finds out she's on television. Jokes aside, this is actually a pretty noticeable appearance of Mrs. Claus, who is played by Doris Rich. This would be the first appearance of Mrs. Claus in a motion picture. This film would beat Rankin Bass's depiction of Mrs. Claus and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer by 3 weeks. Santa's given Andy a tour of the workshop, showing him the various toys they're making, including a rocket that uses real rocket fuel. Wow, that sounds really safe. About as safe as this Godzilla toy from back in the day. Anywho, Winky made a doll of a Martian that looks spot on to the Martians that we're going to see later in this film. It's like, damn, Winky, do you got winning lotto numbers too? We get introduced to the children's dad, Kemar. Yeah, I know, you're going to see all these names really suck. Basically, Gemar is short for Girl Martian, Bomar for Boy Martian, Momar for Mom Martian, Kemar for King Martian. Anyways, he runs into the planet's comic relief Droppo, who's busy sleeping under a table. Droppo claims he's had trouble sleeping the last few nights because he just simply forgot how to. I bet every kid on Earth who didn't want to go to school and did actually see this film probably all responded the same way after they saw this scene.
Write that down, write that down!
Kmart attempts to get the Martian kids to bed, but they want to stay up so they can watch more Santa on their parents' stolen cable. Also, what kind of range does the TV station have? Sending a live signal to Mars? That's absolutely incredible. And wow, I thought my bed was uncomfortable. Maybe mom and dad should splurge on better beds if they want their kids to go to sleep. Momar returns from the store to get more food pills, which sounds absolutely horrible. I couldn't take food pills. I couldn't. I've seen Willy Wonka too many times. It's here where we find out that the kids haven't eaten for days and seem trouble, and once again they had to drug their kids to get them to go to sleep with sleep spray. We also find out that this is an issue all over Mars. Momar insists that as leader of Mars, it's up to Kemar to do something about this. He decides that he's going to get his council together and, on advice of Momar, go to the forest to seek the counsel from the Ancient One, Chochum. And this is a forest? Man, climate change on Mars must be hell. I'm actually speechless. In all honesty, they should have just said they need to head to the mountains. That would have made a lot more sense than this. We find out that the life-size troll doll Chochum, who I actually think is yogurt from Spaceballs, is 800 years old. Yeah, from this encounter, I believe it. Kimar explains the issue with the children of Mars, and Chochum tells them that it's December on Earth and everyone is getting ready for Christmas, as Earth children wait the anticipation of the arrival of Santa Claus. Chochum believes that the children of Mars are growing distracted due to society's over-rigid structure. From birth, their education is fed into their brain through machines. They're not allowed individuality or freedom of thought. The children have no childhood and are basically adults in children's bodies, and now they're rebelling. Chochum notes that he's seen this coming for centuries. Wow, thanks for warning someone, guy. You've seen this coming for centuries and you couldn't pick up the phone and call someone? He said the only way to help the children is to allow them their freedom and allow them to have fun. To do this, Mars needs a Santa Claus figure like we have on Earth. Yeah, that doesn't seem irrational at all.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Also, Chochum seems like he's teetering on the brink of death before he goes up in smoke and seems to disintegrate. I don't understand why they need to visit Yogurt here anyway to learn about Christmas. You'd think with access to Earth programs from their stolen cable, they've already heard of the holiday. Kimar surmises that they must go to Earth and bring back Santa Claus to save the Martian children. Voldar, sporting a great Tom Selleck mustache right now, is absolutely against this, believing that Santa will corrupt the children of Mars, turning away from Mars' original glory. I think Voldar suffers from the same thing that Mo suffers from.
I'm not used to the laughter of children. It cuts through me like a dentist drill.
Blowing off Voldar's concerns, Kimar orders a ship ready to take off from Mars to kidnap Santa Claus and bring him back to Mars. So they take off in a rocket that looks like it's powered by a very big Bic lighter. They end up outside of New York and are confused by all the Santas that's all over the city. Believing that Earth had multiple Santas and wouldn't miss them taking one, plan on landing and snatching one and returning to Mars. The Martians' arrival forces the U.S. military to spring into action and deploy stock footage, which helps pad for time because there is an unbelievable amount of footage at the beginning of this film. Absolutely way too much. This is what we refer to as filler. The Martians find out the reason the military can track them and have deployed stock footage is because the radar box isn't working due to a bad case of Droppo. Good grief, like I said, there's a lot of stock footage. Is this a Christmas film or an armed forces ad? The Martians quickly fix the radar box, and since the military can no longer track the UFO on radar, we're again subjected to more military stock footage. Seems like the creator needed to spend more time on the script and less time on the need for use for stock footage, because like I said, it goes on for what seems like an eternity here. And what is almost as bad as having to watch the stock footage? How about watching the entire landing sequence from beginning to end? Either show the ship landing, or just have one of the Martians tell Kimar that the ships have landed. After finally landing their damn rocket, we get introduced to the Earth children, Billy and Betty. Kimar tells them not to be afraid. Of course, he says this while two of his men are pointing guns at him. Well, I guess one is actually just holding a Whammo air blaster. And I'm serious. That thing he is holding is a toy that you could walk into a store and buy in 1964. Could you imagine if George Lucas did that and had stormtroopers running around carrying toy guns in the Star Wars films? Man, that would have went over really well. Anyways, if you want one right now, just go on eBay and buy some Martian Army surplus. Billy ends up spilling his guts telling the Martian that the Santas they see around the cities are just Santa's helpers, and where to actually find the real Santa in his workshop. Voldar grabs the children to prevent them from alerting the authorities, which you're going to find out later on is just complete nonsense. And wouldn't you know it, the kids get snatched and we get subjected to more stock footage because of lack of story and plot. As they travel to the North Pole, Droppo secretly gives the children a tour of the ship, conveniently showing them the radar box and a button that flashes when someone's coming to the bridge. Which, of course, flashes, forcing Droppo to hide the kids in the radar box. The creator of this film, feeling like the previous scene of them landing wasn't enough for us, treat us to another landing sequence. Voldar tells Kimar that after they grab Santa that they need to take the children back to Mars as well so no one will ever know what happened to Santa. Again, this turns out to be bullshit because in this reality, the world knows that Santas exist, and Mrs. Claus alerts the world that the Martian that kidnapped Santa anyways. Upon hearing this plan, Billy sabotages the ship's radar box to make sure that the Martians will be detected upon their escape from Earth. And Billy says that they'll have the entire Space Force after them. Guess we all know where the U.S. government came up with that one. The children then set out to find Santa's workshop and warn him before the Martians can capture him. Now let's forget that Andy reported that it was negative 90 degrees outside and somehow the kids aren't frozen the second they step off the ship to go alert Santa. And it's here where we finally get to one of the most infamous scenes of this entire film. The kids attempt to hide from Voldar in a small cave, but he's forced to stop his search of that cave when one of the worst animal costumes I've ever seen in my entire life in a film of a polar bear suddenly appears. I mean, look at this. This is what happens when you purchase your special effects from Dollar Tree. I also like the piss poor camera work here when the polar bear walks off set. The kids finally are able to escape the cave when the polar bear leaves, and they're immediately captured by the giant killer robot. Again, this was a killer robot in 1951, and this is what we get. This seems more fitting for a middle school play than a motion picture. After a murder attempt by Voldar, Kimar orders the children back to the ship, and Billy gives Kimar a real zinger.
Won't get away with this, you Martians!
Again, I think we can do better than that.
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
See, I think that's a lot better. After all the stock footage and all the landing sequences and all the other nonsense, they finally get to Santa's workshop and they finally send Torg in to grab Santa, who still seems pretty high from whatever the hell he's smoking in that pipe. And of course, he naturally mistakes Torg for a toy because, hey, why not? Kimar and Voldar end up rushing in when Torg will no longer respond. Voldar uses his whammo air blaster on the elves and Mrs. Claus, and Kimar tells Santa he doesn't want to hurt anyone. Seems kind of crazy coming from the guy who just busted down your door with your supposedly killer robot, shot 3 people with their whammo air blaster, and are currently pointing a gun at you. Kimar must have been a reporter for CNN before becoming the king of Mars. Once they have Santa, they decide to leave Torg behind since basically he's a toy now. And how did Santa turn him into a toy, you ask? They never explain it. Yeah, your guess is pretty much as good as mine. After coming around, Mrs. Claus alerts the authorities of the kidnapping, completely negating the reason for kidnapping the kids. And the world, of course, is immediately pissed that Santa's been taken and vow to get him back. Voldar, who still thinks this whole plan is complete and utter nonsense, pretty much like the rest of us do, go down to give their hostages a tour of the ship with obvious malice intent, of course. He shows them the airlock, planning to blast them out into the void of cold space. Something I really would love to do with this film myself. This leads to an intense fight between Voldar and Kimar, as tense as a fight bought on Wish.com could be. Mars, the planet of war, if you say so. Voldar is arrested as Santa and the kids magically show up on the bridge after surviving the murder attempt by utilizing Santa's powers to go up the air duct. I'll give the film credit for using a clever use of one of Santa's abilities to thwart danger here. Santa awkwardly laughs, boarding a psychotic breakdown, because, hey, attempted murder is funny. We get another landing sequence because, hey, why not? We still have the pad for more time. When the Martians attempt to take Voldar into custody from the cell to stand trial, we find out that Voldar got the drop on Droppo and managed to escape. Santa, the Earth Children, and Kimar's kids all meet and share another very awkward laugh with Santa. Man, he must be high whatever he's smoking in that pipe from earlier. I swear this guy isn't all there. Between all these weird laughing episodes and him blowing off all the attempted murder, this guy comes off as either completely void of reality or just plain-ass fried. Kimar informs Santa they're going to construct a workshop right away for him so he can start making toys. Kimar also gives the also great news that Santa will never return to Earth and that he belongs to Mars now. At the newly constructed toy workshop, Santa and the Earth Children, who all seem to be taking their toy-making enslavement on Mars in stride, are busy making toys for the Martian children who have written Santa Claus letters. And for some strange reason, they all seem to want Earth toys. There isn't any Martian-related items they could be producing, like Martian dolls or toy Martian weapons. After Santa wears out his finger, he and the enslaved crew call it quits for the day. Droppo asks Santa if he could try on the extra suit that Momar made him. Santa tells him it would never fit because he isn't fat enough. Man, I wish I had that problem. After returning from their forced toy making, the children seem oddly depressed. Yeah, I can't imagine why. Surely it couldn't be from being kidnapped at gunpoint, forced to go to Mars against their will, almost being killed by Voldar and a lame robot, and forced to help Santa make toys. Momar tells Kimar they're homesick and that he has to send them home. He says that's impossible. Why exactly? Who knows? Maybe doesn't feel like making a trip or paying for the gas. Earth already knows they have Santa, so what's he trying to keep secret by holding him there? Worried they could spill the beans on the whole slave labor thing? Or perhaps it's a stolen Earth cable? While Kimar is trying to think of a crap reason the kids can't return to Earth, we get the Droppo. Undeterred by the suit not fitting him, he's wearing the extra suit that Lady Momar made him for Santa, and evidently the extra beard as well. Yeah, just roll with it. He's busy trying to fat himself up so he can fit in the suit properly. He finds out it's just easier to use a pillow, and he dons a poorly fitted Santa hat that completely shows his antenna, and decides to continue making toys for the Martian children. Unfortunately for Droppo and us, Voldar, who's sworn vengeance on Santa for everything that's happened, and his men are in the workshop busy sabotaging a toy machine. After they somehow mistaken Droppo for Santa, even though he's green and you can clearly see his Martian helmet and antennas, they kidnap him and take him back to their cave. Not sure how the hell you mistaken him for Santa, but we'll go with it. The next day, Santa and his child slave labor return to the workshop. Unable to locate Droppo there, they start making toys again. They quickly find out that the toy machine is not working properly, prompting Bomar to inform his father of the issue with the toy-making machine. Kimar senses Voldar is responsible for not only sabotaging the toy machine, but also responsible for Droppo missing. He decides to go off and try and locate Droppo. Luckily for him, Voldar and Stobo have come to confront Kimar with their demands as Shim watches Droppo back at the cave. Voldar tells him they have Santa hostage, and one false move and he'll be disintegrated. Pathetically, they still haven't noticed they kidnapped Droppo by mistake. Seems like Mars is in bigger need of an optometrist instead of Santa. Kimar calls their bluff and asks if they're sure they have Santa. Seeing the real Santa, they mistakenly assume he escaped, prompting the bubbling bad guy to reveal where they're holding Droppo and who has him. Back at the caves, Droppo plans and executes one of the worst prison breaks I've ever seen by merely switching the light bulbs on the nuclear curtain controls and then running out. Doing this all while Shim is busy 2 feet away by a fire. Back at the workshop, Voldar gets the drop on Kimar, and Billy overhears his plan to get Santa. Santa decides instead of fighting for himself, he's going to construct a plan that puts the kids' lives in danger. Maybe leaving the kids with the man that keeps getting high on whatever it is that's in that pipe isn't such a good idea. Voldar comes threatening Santa, who's smoking his pipe and is laid back with his mind on his toys and toys on his mind. The kids then unleash hell on Voldar as Santa just sits back baked, laughing uncontrollably. Voldar, who somehow knocked out Kimar earlier, just stands there taking it like an idiot, getting pelted with toys and bubbles. He doesn't even make an attempt to use his Whammo air blaster at all. So Mars is the planet of war, huh? Droppo finally arrives back at the workshop after his escape dressed as Santa still, which dumbass Stobo still doesn't realize isn't Santa. You'd think after he looks at Droppo and looks at the real Santa, he would realize that these two look nothing alike. But whatever. As Stobo attempts to take care of Droppo, Kimar steps in and arrests both Stobo and Voldar. Seeing Droppo in a suit, Santa tells Kimar Mars doesn't need him. They got a perfectly great Santa and Droppo, which just leads to some more drug-induced, borderline psychotic laughter. They all say their goodbyes and we near the end of this monstrosity. But not before more laughing. And why is Kimar saying goodbye? Shouldn't he be leaving with them to bring them home? The end. And thank goodness. But we still have that damn song to contend with. So what did I think of this 1964 masterpiece? Time to go to the hits and misses. Starting with the misses, and there are a few. It's basically the entire film from beginning to end. It's a film with very little budget. They had roughly $200,000, from which I researched was about half of what an episode of Star Trek cost at the time, and it shows. The script is bad. The costumes are stereotypical with the Martians being green and having antennas. The sets aren't very good. You got kids' toys that are used for weapons. The color is very drab. And not only do you have a terrible looking polar bear, but you have an even worse looking robot. Santa is also way too cheerful with dealing with kidnapping, slavery, attempted murder. When faced with these situations, he seems to shrug everything off, even laughing in some of the circumstances. A laugh that seems like he's having a psychotic breakdown. And some things don't make much sense in this film, like Kimar sticking weapons in the faces of Santa and the kids and telling them not to be afraid. And then there's also the ancient one, Chochum. Is he a Martian? If he is, then why isn't he in green? And where's his antennas? Then there's also all the damn stock footage at the beginning of this that seems to go on and on the pad for time. It went on way too long, as did the unnecessary landing sequences throughout this film. The movie is 81 minutes long, and it struggled to get even to that. And finally, the hits, and there are a few things I did like. A couple things stand out here. The first is the historic nature of this film, with the first instance where we see Mrs. Claus in a film, again beating Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer by 3 weeks. Then there's also some star power here. From Ned Werdimer and his future role in The Jeffersons, to a young Pia Zadora, who would go on to win a Golden Globe for her role in the 1980 film Butterfly. Then there's Mars comic relief Droppo, played by actor Bill McCutcheon. Bill would go on to win a Tony Award for Best Feature Actor in 1988 for his role in Anything Goes. He also won an Obie Award for Ensemble Performance in 1985 for The Marriage of Bet and Boo. He would also go on to play Uncle Wally on the children's show Sesame Street from 1984 until 1992. I also like how they incorporated Santa's ability to travel down chimneys when they had him escape certain death by using the air duct, even if later he shrugged it off as no big deal. So is this film worthy of your time, or should you have Voldar help you blow it out the airlock and into the cold void of space to hopefully never be seen again? I'd say use the airlock and save yourself some misery, because this film is bad, and I mean really bad. But if you absolutely have to see it and are looking for some humor, I suggest watching the MST3K episode of this film. That ought to soften the blow a little bit. Well, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, hit that like and subscribe button below. If you didn't like it, then tell that weird-ass uncle that only comes around the holidays to hit that like and subscribe button. But that's all I got. Until next time, I'm Bob, you're you. Merry Christmas, everyone.